Thank you all so much for giving me a little bit of your time. For the first time in my life, I've just had an effective dose of mushrooms. Grew them myself legally, thankfully, here in the Netherlands. Wanted to use them for personal development and healing and exploration of my mind, and to understand them better and what they can offer and do for our health. Mental health, most of all. Grateful for my experience. Grateful for my two wonderful friends staying with me on the phone throughout it. That ended up being such an important part of it. And being able to talk with them and their respect and kindness was so important throughout. So if you're listening or watching this, thank you both. Amazing friends. Thank you for being with me. It means everything. Had some important insights, important stuff to share about it. First of all, anyone interested in psilocybin mushrooms needs to understand something at higher doses, which is your body will shake and your body temperature will be all over the place. For me, I get quite cold in different places, occasionally a little hot. The best way for me to handle that is just in bed with blankets and just move them around accordingly. The shakes were not that scary, to be honest with you. In fact, I wasn't alarmed by them. Almost, I shouldn't say shake so much, just adjustments your body is taking, because it's got this substance in it, and it's a powerful substance. So you're feeling it in your limbs, and it's for someone who hasn't experienced it, maybe it's scary. I wasn't scared by it in the slightest. It's just something like when you're really cold, you shake actually, and maybe it's just directly tied to the body temperature thing. Maybe that's all it is. Could be. Any psilocybin experts out there, I think the body temperature thing is way understudied. And there was a study out of Prague where they put psilocybin in rats, where at least they talked about body temperature changes and they started measuring it. So I'm glad that's getting more attention. I'm curious what future studies will show on that. The significance of the mushroom is a cultural one, and because it starts to help you contextualize what your ego is in a way unlike anything else I've encountered. It has been speculated by McKenna and others that there's an alien intelligence in there. McKenna even said maybe it's a galactic intelligence in there. Other times I've heard him say that when you meet the other, it's actually yourself. I'm more and more of that opinion through some personal experience, and that the alien intelligence is a deep version of ourselves that we normally never come into contact with. And that this part of our diet, which of course was part of our ancestors' diet in the African rainforest before the continent experienced desertification, the lush rainforests, our hunter-gatherer ancestors were, of course, coming across this on the underside of the droppings of the things that they were hunting. To think that they would not have been experimenting with it and trying it out and trying different doses and all stuff, I think is preposterous. And so we, I think, should assume that at least parts, if not all, of McKenna's stoned ape hypothesis, just because I haven't even heard a competing hypothesis or theory, by the way. I haven't even heard one. If you know one, let me know. But, how did we develop language? How did we differentiate ourselves from the other species, etc.? We know that, for instance, our sense of smell reduced over time, over evolution, because our ancestors were probably eating carrion and dead things on the ground and all kinds of stuff. So we have a reduced sense of smell compared to other animals. It's very likely that we would have been trying different parts in our diet and experimenting with things, and especially something that was probably the most interesting thing on the planet at the time, to be honest. If you could trip something that, you don't need to take my word for it. Look at the hospital visits for different what are called drugs, and in terms of most destructive, most frequent hospital visits, alcohol is top of the list. The thing a lot of people don't know is what's at the bottom of the list. Mushrooms, least harmful, least incidence of problems. I'm not going to say this thing is a miracle, but I have a very high opinion of the mushroom and what it can offer us as human beings individually, and I'm more interested personally in the collective. The individual is just as important, and arguably is the collective, if not, at the very least, a representative of the collective. The health of the psyche of the individual is a reflection of the health of the collective psyche, in my view. And shout out to Piers Morgan, by the way. I think that guy gets it now. That there's a binary, it seems, between humanization and dehumanization. And we can't afford to continue entertaining the fear model, the othering model that continues to dehumanize our fellow humans and results in horrific, endless war crimes, genocide, all of it. We can't keep going down that road if we expect to survive and have a future. And we should strive to have a future. We should strive for humanization. This is a team we can all get on, but is obstructed. Our path currently is obstructed because of ideology. True believers in things that idea systems that have a therefore attached to them, which is what ideology is. Ideas in themselves are beautiful because they don't have therefores. They're not presumptive. They're just proposals, like love conquers all is an idea, but it's not an ideology. But something like Scripture says X, there's a therefore next to that. There's these commands, there's this way of doing. We lose our way when we start to be presumptive, and when we lose our curiosity specifically. The powerful thing about ideas is that they're just ideas. They're up for discussion. If somebody wants to argue with the idea of love conquers all, they certainly can. What is love? It's in our music, but it's a more serious idea about what is our connection to each other, to the planet, and what is the future that we plan to have, that we're building for. And you see some people have kind of given up on life on this planet. Some people really think that there's kind of a doomsday scenario, an apocalyptic mentality around this planet and our future. Some people think we can only live if we go off the planet and stuff like that. And I'm not like anti-space exploration by any means, but it's important to understand at what cost, and is it worth it while, and is that a good idea? And it needs to be a public discussion. So the war machine that we have globally currently is invested in proxy wars everywhere, as you know. And you could argue all the biggest wars that we're reading about every day in our news are just more proxy wars, and I certainly think so. We have a psychology at the top of our leadership, and no one's to blame, by the way. No one is to blame. The psychology and the culture is to blame, not the people. The ideology is to blame. People are actors, and I don't mean that they're faking it. I think they really believe whatever the Kool-Aid is they're drinking, that basically in their own mind establishes some kind of supremacy. And we can bring in any dimension of supremacy here. I don't think it's necessary for the conversation. When you have a psyche that allows and enables supremacy, that's just another way of enabling othering, and a way that ultimately betrays our own humanity and betrays ourselves. We don't have to have such a hopelessness in our hearts and in our minds. We have every reason to hope. Thankfully, we are so gifted and privileged and blessed to live in a time with technology that could truly transform the world for the better. Some ways has done amazing strides already to do so. In other ways has created a new type of hell on our earth that's getting worse and worse, that desperately needs to be addressed immediately, and is not impossible. That's the biggest message I want to leave with you. It's not impossible for us to address this. It's not impossible for us to think about a better path forward. It's not impossible for us to design a better operating system for our culture that isn't about circling the drain and endless killing and endless bullshit, to be frank. Supremacy is for the birds. What is it all? It's all in service of someone having a mansion somewhere and luxury car and somehow remote commanding other people to have miserable lives in service so they can sit in an ivory tower and disconnect. I mean, that's like the ultimate disconnection, I would argue, from people and planet, from each other, and ultimately doesn't serve that person. What do you get? What do you get by extracting that much well-being from the planet? What have humans gotten by driving? Many years ago, I saw like already 70% of global species estimated to be extinct. Who knows how much higher that number is now? We don't understand the amount of damage we're doing to the planet. And I'm not going to focus on the doom aspects and be alarmist, and it doesn't help to run around and say the sky is falling on us, stuff like that. It doesn't. It really doesn't. But it doesn't help us either to be constant denialists and pretend it's not happening and pretend live in a bubble, protect ourselves, forget about our society, broader society. That's not only a betrayal of our fellow humans, but it's a delaying of the moment when it catches up to us. You know the great quote, and I've forgotten the author, so shame on me, but something along the lines of, they came for this group first, they came for that group next, I did not speak up, they came for that other group next, I did not speak up, and at last they came for me because there was no one to speak up for me. I want to take that idea a step further and say, when we don't speak up for each other, it's an abandonment of the self already, because it's emotionally and psychologically a closed down version of us. We are pretending that we are not our brother's keeper inside this broken operating system of our culture based in fear and degradation and harm and all the bullshit you don't need me to go through. We can chart a better path forward together. We can do it together, but we have to be able to talk about it and think about it. And I appreciate all your time. I don't want to make this any longer than it is. I really appreciate your time. This is a big problem we're all stuck in. It's a cultural problem. We need an operating system upgrade away from the fear model to something that serves all of us and is profitable for all of us. ChatGPT says if we ditch the war machine model globally, we can boost our global GDP from about 115 trillion it's at now in 10 years up to 400 trillion. If we reallocate it, invest it wisely, we establish trust and cooperation between countries, there's an enormous upside, and all the powerful people at the top make bank. So it can be very attractive for them too, and it should be. So the human psyche thing is the thing to get through. The money is there, and the money will flow if we can ditch the war stuff. You know what I'm saying? And who doesn't want to be rich? That 400 trillion will go to all of us.